How's it going, everybody? Blue Shirt Pete here, ready to give you another fun fly to tie. Today we're going to mash up half a Stimi with half a Wolf, and it leads to nothing but success. So grab your stuff, let's tie some flies. Alright, in the vise today we've got the Ahrex FW531, and this is the size 12. And what we're going for is pretty much an unsinkable, all-around terrestrial, but one that kind of keys in on the October caddis look. A lot of cutthroat are happy to look up at an orange body, and that seems to make a bit of a difference. For our thread today, I got some Veevus 8/0 in brown. So all we're going to do to get this started is wrap this thread base all the way down to where we want our tie-in for the tail to be. So as you can see, I'm coming just slightly down the curve there, a couple wraps, and then I'll come back up and get ready for our tail, if you will, once we're there. First though, since we're going to mash two kind of dry flies together here, we're going to have essentially the back end of a stimulator, a naked body stimulator, and then in the front we're going to have some action similar to what you would see in a wolf pattern. So let's get some of that started. And the reason you'll see a lot of people tie in the post first, even though it makes more sense, it's clean back here, go ahead and get your tail and body tied. By tying in the post first, it automatically helps your eye and your brain start measuring the remainder of this space, and then it's much easier to create a correct looking fly anatomically by having the abdomen and thorax spaced correctly. So what I'm looking for right now as far as a placement for my post is going to be slightly in that 1/3 to 1/4 region back from the eye. And when I say roughly, once I finish this post, then the rest of the body will become clear as far as what I need to do. So for today, I'm using Parapost, and you can see I've got 4 strands, which is how it comes in the package. And so I'm going to start this 1 wrap forward. I really like that placement. Once I've got this, I'm really going to crank down on these wraps here on every single one, and I'm going to go all the way, so about 8-10 wraps back. Nothing crazy, but it's solid. This thing's not going to move on me now. And at that point, I can come up a couple wraps. I'm going to get my scissors in here. I'm going to angle them downward and then make my cut. So now you see, oh, I was able to cut my thread there on the back, but that's okay. We'll just come back with our thread, cover up where we just trimmed those butt ends, and then let's go ahead and re-wrap over our thread base. And as you can see, there's going to be no issue from that at all. Get back up to our post, and now let's start working on this. So Parapost itself is treated with a watershed chemical, and so it on its own, very easy to float, if you will. So now I'm going to separate it so I have 2 strands on each side there, and then I'm going to simply start some figure 8 wraps between the strands. So I get 2 on each side, just a little figure 8, and lock it down, pull them back, thread wrap, building that thread dam in the front so that when we're done, these are going to stand roughly straight up. And at this point, I'm just going to work a few thread wraps around the bases of both of these posts. And be patient. I'm trying to be out of your way here on camera. I'm just slowly working 1 wrap at a time. Not crazy on the tension, otherwise you can see it'll undo itself, and just try to climb the post. And this is about all I need here for a base. We're not tying a parachute today, we're just tying a wolf style, so you can see that one's going to sit properly. And let's turn this just a little. I'll make it slightly easier on myself, even though I'm going to wrap lefty and switch back and forth from right hand to left hand on this part. At home, if there's no camera in front of you, it's going to be a little bit easier to maneuver. So as you can see, I'm running into a spacing issue, but no worries, we can make this work. There we go. Let me get that first post out of the way. And again, there's no cement or glue on these, so if you need to move them for a minute, by all means, just do that. Forgive my fingers there. That was not a good wrap. There we go. And maybe one more here on the way up. I lied. 2 more. Alright. Get that seated at the bottom, and then at this point I'll stand them up. Some more figure 8s. A locking wrap in between. And there we have our posts somewhat tied in. And I'm going to call that good. So just to give the bases a little bit more strength before we go into the tail all the way, I'm going to come in with just a little bit of head cement right now and get the bases where the thread is on both of these posts just kissed with some cement. It'll work through there, get into the base of those fibers, and then when we come back to finish that wing, everything's ready for us. Nothing's going to budge. Alright, and again, I'm just going to tilt those forward. They're out of your viewing way and they're out of my tying way. And we can manipulate those quite a bit. Alright, now let me get back into position for our tail. So I have 2 hair stackers over here, and I don't know how nice they're going to play for us. Not too bad. So this first stack of hair, this is bleached elk hair from Hareline. As you can see, it's not a perfect stack, and that's okay. We don't need it to be. As far as the tail measurement, I'm going to look at roughly 1/2 of that shank length for my tail length, and then I'm going to transfer the grip to my off tying hand, and then that grip just goes to where the end of our tie-in point is. One loose wrap here, just make sure everything's on top of the shank, and then we can work our way back down, increasing the strength of our wraps as we go. If we were to really cinch down those first 2 wraps, all that hair would flare out to where it's not even controllable anymore. A couple solutions: pre-cut your hair so that it ends exactly where you want it, or you can do like I do if you're a glutton for punishment and go offhand and start making some left-handed wraps there, and you can see the issue is they want to slip back. So once you've got one, grab it with your tying hand. Got one, tying hand, and just kind of switch back and forth. And all I'm really looking for at this point is where the tie off from our post was, where we cut. And I want to match those up so that I have a rather smooth underbody, and then I'll come in here and trim out these hairs. So there's always more than one way to accomplish your goal with tying flies. So if you don't like one technique, or one doesn't work for your hands, or whatever it might be, there's another way. Sometimes being creative is helpful. Alright, so now let's really cinch down all this elk hair. Make that underbody just as smooth as possible. And I've got one elk hair that wants to stay in the post, and it's just not allowed. Alright, so now this is about as simple as it gets for a rib, and a lot of times we think of a dry fly and we don't consider a rib, or if we do, it's because of a hackle that's wrapped for the body. Today I pre-cut a piece of this 8/0 brown Veevus. I'm simply going to wrap that in all the way to the back, and that's going to be our rib. Really fancy. A little bit of thread. Now, to get this orange going in this fly, get a body that they can see for sure, I'm going to be using some 3D EP fibers in the color orange. The one thing you want to do here is use less than what you think you're going to need. It doesn't take a whole lot, and that body is going to kind of get dense and thick as we go. So start off with just a little bit less material than you think. So that's going to absolutely cover this. And if you're jumping up to, let's say, a size 10 or 8, then of course you just use a few more fibers. But again, even if you use this same exact amount, it's going to still bulk up and create a natural looking taper for you as you wrap. So we're going to use slightly overlapping wraps. And cleanly, we're going to trim out our EP fibers and then the tag end of our rib as well, all in one swoop. And keeping it clean, See, one fiber, I'm not sure where it's from, but I don't want it there, so I'll just remove it. Alright, now let's get up to here, and I'm going to take one wrap in front of the posts just so my thread is absolutely out of the way. Alright, so here's our body material, and here's our thread rib. But to trap that rib, I'm going to take that first wrap of body material behind the rib and then bring it back so that the second wrap traps that rib, and now it's not going anywhere. And then I'll just, again, very slightly overlapping wraps, and you'll get full coverage. You don't necessarily want to see that underbody, aka the thread, showing through this beautiful orange. And so if you were to just simply do touching wraps, it'd be difficult because of the material nature, but it would also leave gaps. Doing it this way, just take your time and you'll have no issue. Full coverage should look pretty good on your side. At this point, I'm going to bring the thread back and catch the EP fibers. One more thread wrap to solidify, and then I can pull these guys back and just tie down ever so slightly. I'm going to turn this for you once I trim these fibers out, and I'll show you that's how much space you should be eating up by turning that material over itself. Not much at all. Alright, and again, one more to solidify and get the thread in front. And now this huge rib that we've tied in, this brown thread, let's see if it just creates a small amount of segmentation. That's all we're looking for here. And it seems to be doing just fine. Work that up. As you can see, I am counter wrapping. You wouldn't necessarily have to on this fly, but it's a good habit to get into. Stronger fly, why not? Alright, I'm going to tie this rib off in front of our posts. A couple more solidifying wraps there. Call that good. Trim that out. Alrighty, we're getting there, folks. Hope you like this so far. Alright, so now I'm going to start covering a little bit of these wraps of the body to give myself a visual cue for this wing. And if you look, the space behind the posts is almost identical to the space in front of the posts, and that's not an accident. That is what we're looking for. So now let me get my feathers out of these EP fibers. I got a mess going on off camera. I wish you guys could see this. You would enjoy. Alright, so there we go with that. One feather is loose, and now the other is loose. If you're not having fun and losing materials, are you even tying? Alright, so this is stacker number 2. This one's going to be a little cleaner. It's the right size stacker for the job. Same thing, got some bleached elk hair. If you wanted to throw some flash in, do it now. I don't really need any flash for this. I just, for me, there's the cider. For them, there's the body. Good to go. So I'm going to come in here. I want to match the ends here to right around the same as the tail. And then I'm just going to start with a thread wrap that places, and then as I come up, I'm increasing tension, which is increasing the flare. On the second, third, fourth wrap, I'm increasing how much I'm pulling down with every wrap. So that by the time I get to 6, 7 wraps, I have not increased that space of the thorax at all. If you notice, everything is tied in nice and snug. That wing isn't going anywhere. If there's any tricky part now, it's again cutting out the rest of the butt fibers here. And so be patient. And again, if you don't like this method, you can always pre-cut that hair, and then you know the measurement before you even start tying it in. And so let's get these pulled back and get a little bit of a cleaner cut right in there. And then 1 or 2 fibers right there, and we can call that good. Except for what the parapost wants to hold. There we go. Must be good hair. Everything's trying to grab it today. And trim that little guy out. Alright. So Again, clean wing right there. It's just a nice caddis look to this fly. And since we're coming up on the October caddis, I don't mind that too much. All right. So let me get some thread wraps here in the front so that I don't have a huge slope from back to front. This one's pretty significant, but I'm going to be able to work around that. All right, I mentioned a couple feathers in here, and this is where the Wulff style is going to really finish off. You got split posts and all that good stuff, but here is a brown Rooster saddle feather and then a Grizzly Rooster saddle. And as you can see, I've prepared the butt ends here, trimmed them out like I always do, and now I'm just going to stack these. And I'm going to go with the brown in front and the Grizzly in back, and I'm tying them so that the pretty side or the convex side is looking out toward me, with the concave side being against the shank or our body materials. And at this point, since I haven't tied them super long, you see I'm not going to have issues. If I don't want to trim those butts, I can simply come right in and tie them in front. And so that gives those feathers a little bit extra room of tie-in, which of course is going to make them stronger. All right. And at this point too, if you wanted to add some dubbing, by all means you surely could. I'm going to do it without so that you get a better visual of how we're going to wrap both these feathers. Now, I'm pretty good at wrapping multiple feathers at once, but for something like this, I want to create spacing that allows me to have the strongest wraps of these feathers. So brown in front, Grizzly in back, I'm going to start with the Grizzly then. And what it's going to allow me to do, in theory, I'm going to get that hair to move back. So this is going to mark the back of the hackles. And so by starting with that rear hackle, it's going to give me a straightish line up and down. I'm not going to have fibers going all the way back or forward or any of that. All I'm going to do now is kind of visualize enough space for a second hackle to wrap between. It might not look great in the camera, but once you've done it a couple times, this will all make sense. So I'm going to get 4 wraps here by the time I tie this off, which means I should get about the same with that front feather. And the only difference is where it finishes. So you can see there I've got some spacing. Caught that feather with 2 wraps. Let's get in front of it now with a couple more. At this point, it's safe for me to trim this feather out. And the less you have in your way at this point, the easier this is all going to be for you. Almost done. So now our second feather, because of giving it that bumper, if you will, all we have to do is get that slicked in between the first wrap there, and then all we're having to do is follow our little road that we've made. And I might even sneak in an extra wrap just because. There we go. So I'm going to brush these back, get a clean uptick, and follow that same line straight across, straight through, whatever you want to call it, with my thread. Now I don't have a bunch of fibers sticking out over the eye. Again, pull them all back, get a couple good thread wraps in front, and we trim out our second hackle. And if you like fishing dry flies like I do, having something with a bunch of hackle in the front, a nice bushy look, it just gives you a little bit more confidence, especially if you're throwing it against the bank. You got the visual cue from the pair of posts. You're not going to miss that. This stuff is like a light bulb. I got a few fibers I need trimmed out in the front there, and we are ready for a whip finish. Alright, so be mindful you don't have a lot of room to work with here. So just take your time. Don't rush it. And there's our whip finish. I think we can get a second one in there. And voila. Cinch that all the way down. Turn this over, cut that thread out. I've got one fiber that snuck in there. How dare it. Alright, and now the fun part. When you cut these posts, all you need is to be slightly above where the hackle ends. Give it a little pull and a trim. I'll do the same on my side. Can't quite see those fibers, but let's go with that. And there you have it. I'm gonna head cement this thing, and it's probably a good time to call in sick and go fishing. So there you are, a combo of a Stimi in back, a wolf in front, and you've got a dry fly that floats all day and puts the smack on those trout. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please hit like, please hit subscribe, and we will see you guys on the water.